thousands of brave American soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, smashed through German defenses in a single day, and began the liberation of Europe. Movies, documentaries, and school textbooks often focus on the dramatic images of soldiers charging across the sand under machine gun fire. While those moments were real and incredibly heroic, the full story of the invasion is far more complex than the popular version suggests. In fact, historians now argue that a large portion of what people believe about D-Day is incomplete, simplified, or simply misunderstood. If you love World War II history, hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this video with fellow history fans. First, one of the biggest misconceptions is that D-Day was mainly an American operation. In reality, the invasion of Normandy was a massive Allied effort involving multiple nations working together. Troops from the United States landed on Omaha and Utah beaches, but British forces attacked Gold and Sword beaches while Canadian forces stormed Juno Beach. Soldiers from many other Allied countries, including Free French, Polish, Norwegian, and Dutch units, also participated in the operation. The success of the invasion depended on this multinational coordination, not just one army acting alone. Another widely misunderstood point is the idea that the invasion began when the landing craft hit the beaches. In truth, the operation had already started hours earlier. During the night before the landings, thousands of paratroopers from the United States and Britain were dropped deep behind enemy lines. Their mission was to capture bridges, disrupt German reinforcements, and create confusion among defending forces. These airborne units were scattered across the countryside due to heavy anti-aircraft fire and navigation errors. Yet their unexpected presence created chaos within German defensive positions. The scale of the invasion itself is often underestimated. The operation, known as Operation Overlord, required years of preparation and was one of the largest amphibious assaults in history. Nearly 7,000 ships and landing craft crossed the English Channel carrying soldiers, vehicles, supplies, and equipment. Thousands of aircraft flew overhead, providing bombardment, reconnaissance, and airborne support. This immense logistical effort was just as important as the fighting on the beaches. Another common misunderstanding is the belief that German forces were fully prepared and waiting for the invasion exactly where it happened. In reality, the Allies conducted one of the most sophisticated deception campaigns of the war. Through fake radio traffic, inflatable tanks, and phantom armies, the Allies convinced German commanders that the invasion would occur at the Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. Even after the landings began, some German leaders believed Normandy was only a diversion and delayed sending reinforcements. The defensive system along the coast, known as the Atlantic Wall, is also often portrayed as an unstoppable barrier. While parts of it were heavily fortified, many sections were incomplete or poorly supplied. German forces lacked enough troops to defend every mile of coastline effectively. Some units stationed there were composed of older soldiers or conscripts from occupied territories who were not as well trained or equipped as elite German divisions. However, this does not mean the invasion was easy. Certain landing zones, especially Omaha Beach, turned into extremely dangerous battlegrounds. Strong defensive positions, hidden artillery, and difficult terrain caused heavy casualties among the first waves of troops. For several hours, the outcome of the landing remained uncertain. The courage of individual soldiers and small groups of officers played a critical role in pushing the advance forward despite intense resistance. Another myth suggests that the success of D-Day immediately opened the road to victory in Europe. In reality, the battle for Normandy lasted far longer than a single day. After the initial landings, Allied forces became locked in weeks of brutal fighting through dense hedgerows and fortified villages. German units launched counterattacks and fought fiercely to slow the Allied advance. The campaign that followed was slow, exhausting, and costly. Leadership decisions also shaped the outcome of the invasion. Allied commanders like Dwight D. Eisenhower had to coordinate armies from multiple nations while managing weather conditions, supply chains, and constant uncertainty. The decision to launch the invasion itself was influenced by a narrow window of favorable tides, moonlight, and weather patterns. A delay of even a few days could have changed the entire operation. On the German side, command confusion contributed to the Allied success. Key commanders, including Erwin Rommel, had different opinions about how to defend the coastline. Some believed tanks should be positioned close to the beaches, while others argued they should remain inland to counterattack after the landing. These disagreements slowed the German response during the critical early hours of the invasion. Technology also played an unexpected role in the success of the landings. The Allies introduced specialized equipment designed specifically for amphibious warfare. These included amphibious tanks, mobile bridges, armored bulldozers, and other experimental vehicles designed to clear obstacles and support advancing troops. Many of these machines were unusual prototypes, but they helped soldiers overcome the defenses protecting the beaches. Even the weather played a surprising role. The invasion nearly failed before it even began due to storms in the English Channel. Meteorologists predicted a short break in the bad weather that would provide a narrow opportunity for the landings. Acting on this forecast, Eisenhower made the difficult decision to proceed with the invasion despite uncertain conditions. That brief weather window helped catch German defenders off guard. Perhaps the biggest misunderstanding about D-Day is the belief that it was a perfectly planned and flawlessly executed operation. In reality, the invasion was filled with mistakes, confusion, and unexpected challenges. Landing craft drifted off course, paratroopers were scattered far from their drop zones, and some units landed in the wrong locations entirely. Yet these imperfections sometimes worked in the Allies' favor by increasing confusion among German defenders. When historians re-examine the events of June 6, 1944, they often conclude that D-Day succeeded not because everything went according to plan, but because Allied forces adapted quickly when things went wrong. Officers and soldiers on the ground made critical decisions under intense pressure, turning chaotic situations into opportunities to push forward. In the end, the story of D-Day is not just about a single dramatic beach assault. It is about coordination between nations, massive logistical planning, deception strategies, technological innovation, and the courage of thousands of soldiers facing uncertainty. The simplified version of the story captures the heroism of the moment, but the deeper reality reveals an operation far more complicated and far more impressive than the popular narrative suggests. Understanding these details does not diminish the bravery of those who fought on that day. Instead, it shows how extraordinary the achievement truly was. When the full picture is revealed, D-Day becomes not just a famous battle, but one of the most complex and daring military operations ever attempted during World War II. Another aspect often overlooked when discussing D-Day is how uncertain the outcome truly was even for the Allied commanders themselves. In the days leading up to the invasion, Dwight D. Eisenhower privately prepared a short message taking full responsibility in case the operation failed. The note, written before the landings began, stated that if the invasion collapsed, the blame would rest entirely on him. This small piece of history reveals just how risky the entire mission was. Despite the massive planning behind Operation Overlord, there was still a very real possibility that the assault could have ended in disaster. Another misconception is that German defenses were weak everywhere along the coast. While the Atlantic Wall was incomplete in many areas, certain positions were extremely well defended. Machine gun bunkers, artillery positions, minefields, and beach obstacles created deadly killing zones for the first waves of landing troops. Engineers had to clear paths through barbed wire and explosives while under fire, often sacrificing themselves to open routes for the soldiers behind them. These dangerous tasks were essential to the success of the landings, yet they are rarely highlighted in simplified retellings of the battle. Communication problems also played a major role in the early chaos. Radios failed, landing units became separated, and many commanders had little idea where their neighboring units were located. Some companies lost most of their officers within minutes of reaching the shore. In these moments, small groups of soldiers often had to improvise their own plans. Instead of waiting for orders, they moved inland, attacked German positions from unexpected directions, and gradually broke through the defensive lines protecting the beaches. One of the most important elements of the invasion was the incredible logistical support that followed the landings. Capturing the beaches was only the beginning. The Allies needed to bring massive amounts of equipment into France: tanks, trucks, fuel, food, ammunition, and medical supplies. To accomplish this, engineers constructed artificial harbors known as the Mulberry ports, which allowed ships to unload cargo even before major French ports were captured. These temporary harbors became a lifeline for the invasion forces during the critical first weeks of the campaign. The battle for Normandy after the landings proved just how difficult the next phase would be. The countryside was filled with thick hedgerows, natural barriers that created perfect defensive positions for German soldiers. These hedgerows turned fields into small fortresses, forcing Allied troops to fight through one enclosed area at a time. Tanks and infantry struggled to move forward quickly, and progress often came at a heavy cost. German resistance during this period remained fierce. Reinforcements from armored divisions attempted to slow the Allied advance and prevent a breakout from the Normandy beachhead. For weeks, the front lines shifted only slowly as both sides fought for control of villages, roads, and strategic high ground. The campaign became a grinding battle of endurance rather than the rapid liberation many had hoped for. Eventually, Allied forces managed to break through the German lines during a major offensive known as Operation Cobra. This breakthrough allowed Allied armies to move rapidly across France, pushing German forces into retreat and opening the road toward Paris. The success of this operation demonstrated that the real impact of D-Day was not just the landing itself, but the foothold it created for the larger campaign to liberate Western Europe. Looking back today, historians see D-Day as the result of thousands of interconnected decisions, sacrifices, and unexpected developments. It was not simply a single heroic charge across the beaches. It was a vast, complicated effort involving soldiers, sailors, pilots, engineers, intelligence officers, and civilians working together across multiple countries. So when people say that much of what we think we know about D-Day is wrong, they do not mean the bravery or importance of the invasion is exaggerated. Instead, they mean the story is often simplified into a single dramatic moment. The reality is far more complex, involving deception operations, airborne missions, engineering innovations, and weeks of brutal fighting after the initial landings. Understanding the deeper story behind D-Day reveals something even more powerful. Victory was not guaranteed, plans did not always work, and success depended on thousands of individuals adapting to chaos in real time. When all of these pieces are finally seen together, the invasion of Normandy stands as one of the most remarkable achievements of World War II, a turning point shaped not by perfection, but by determination in the face of uncertainty. Another crucial detail often forgotten about D-Day is how much the invasion depended on deception and intelligence. Months before the landings, the Allies launched an elaborate misinformation campaign designed to confuse German commanders about where the attack would happen. Fake armies were created using inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and false radio transmissions. This deception effort convinced much of the German high command that the real invasion would occur far from Normandy. As a result, several powerful German divisions remained stationed elsewhere, even after the landings had already begun. The role of resistance fighters inside occupied France also played an important part in the success of Operation Overlord. Members of the French resistance sabotaged railways, destroyed communication lines, and disrupted German supply routes in the days surrounding the invasion. These small acts of sabotage slowed the movement of German reinforcements that might have reached the beaches sooner. While these actions rarely received the same attention as the fighting on the shoreline, they helped create the conditions that allowed Allied forces to establish their foothold in Normandy. In the end, the deeper truth about D-Day is that its success came from an enormous combination of planning, courage, improvisation, and cooperation between nations. Soldiers on the beaches, pilots in the skis, sailors in the channel, engineers building harbors, and resistance fighters behind enemy lines all played vital roles in the outcome. When these pieces are fully understood, the invasion becomes far more than a single dramatic assault. It becomes one of the most complex and coordinated military operations ever carried out during World War II.